No, we met before we'd ever really met. We knew about each other. As she said, her best friend throughout high school and stuff was my best friend's sister. And it's kind of weird meeting somebody before you actually meet them because it puts a lot of hype and pressure on how they're going to be and how you're going to perceive them. And so, I was wondering before we started, is she going to be a good person? Is she going to be fun to talk to? And most importantly, it being the MFA, is she going to be a good writer? And I'm happy to report that she exceeded my expectations across the board. Her writing is really clear, yet it has a complexity to it that I can't possibly put into words, which is weird since I'm a writer. Should be able to. She has a really modern tone, but with traditional values. Her characters are rich with backstory and emotion. She is a master chief of interiority and conflict. Her stories can lead to these really dark, frightening places, but there's always a halo of light at the end of the tunnel. She plays video games. But enough about that. I think even better than reading her stories is to hear Claire read them to you. So, before I bore you any farther, I'm honored to present to you my fellow writer and friend, Clare Honey Badger Fitzpatrick.
Everything Warren Buchanan just told you is a lie. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to read a short story called Break. Quill went into the forest in the dead of winter because she said that God had told her she would find him there. Scout followed her to protect her when her God failed. The wolves happen upon the campsite while Quill is out collecting firewood. Their howls are sharp, they pierce the winter morning and burst over the heads of mountains. Her breath empties in feeble puffs out into the air, and it is hardly dissipated before she drops the collected wood and tears off into the forest. Scout has just realized her mistake of stepping out of the tent. Before she can remedy this, she is surrounded. She stands hunched, her arms extended outward, palms facing them as they continue to stalk out of the brush, multiplying. Her eyes are darting. There are more and more of them. The steam coming off their jowls is inching its way upwards into the dark gray sky. She clenches her fists, slow and easy. But Scout does not regret coming into the woods. If it gives Quill the slightest notion that something breathes beyond the pale mountain air, beyond this vague yet terrible circumstance, then it isn't all for naught. She takes one small step back. There isn't time, Scout knows it, and the alpha wolf knows it too as he steps out into the front of the circle. He's a giant, his black fur is matted against his skin, and his eyes are fixed on her. His paws, giant gnarled masses of fur, sink into the banks of snow with each step, and Scout can feel it. There's a soft billow of wind, and it ruffles the loose strands of Scout's brown hair. It wisps across hazel eyes, large and glossy in the presence of the alpha. For just a moment, their eyes meet. There is a shared understanding, an understanding about the order of things, the same order of things that brought Quill and Scout into the forest to begin with. Scout inhales the chilled mountain air, rich in the scent of pine. She wonders if the alpha smells it too. Quill picks up speed despite being weighed down by layers of clothing. She's screaming for Scout, bounding towards the campsite like something wild and knowing full well that screaming won't make a difference anyway. She reaches for a fallen tree branch, grabs it, and holds it forward as she readies to break through into the clearing. The alpha circles Scout, and his tongue lolls beneath his lips. They circle each other. Their steps are quiet. They see only the other as the rest of the pack disappears into the white earth. Scout respects the alpha. She respects the white in the fur of his face, the nicks in his ears, the rigid intensity with which he stares at her. She respects him for what he is, a beast of God, an emblem of forest savagery. She respects him because she knows he is something that she will never be, that Quill will never be, a hopelessly blind and loyal servant to the forces that bind him. Scout wonders what it would be like if only it were this way for everyone, and the alpha leaps. Quill remembers standing on the cusp of morning, every morning for as many years as she has, and she remembers the conversations with herself and with Scout and being sorry, always sorry. She hears the sound of her own voice, the way it cracks when it carries, every secret weighing it down. She is still talking to Scout in the quiet of her own mind, saying, sorry, sorry, I'm so sorry. I drove you to your monsters and to the edge of your cliffs. Everything is on me, but before it was me, it was on somebody else who was never sorry. Daddy loved his whiskey, and I think yours did too. In all her pride and in the wake of an emptiness she couldn't see past, Quill couldn't be talked down from any of it. Scout had said something about breaking her like some damn horse. Even when it was said out of anger, they both knew it was true, that it was what Scout desired most, that she wouldn't rest until Quill was quiet. What quiet meant was something neither of them had thought far enough ahead about, but to Scout it was enough. Quill bursts through the brush and into the clearing. She sees only a mass of fur and fangs, and she does not try to quell the monster in her that makes her roar and charge into them on all fours. The wolves stop their ravaging long enough to see her tear into them, and they are wondering if she is a wolf herself. They are on her from all sides. One leaps for her throat and misses, catching her shoulder and tearing off a mouthful of the fabric of her jacket. Another dives for her side, catches her in the abdomen, bites down. They are numerous, merciless, but so is she, and she braces her knees deep in the snow, punches her fists and barrels them forward, letting the wolves amass on her like a locust swarm. And with one great heave, she raises her body into the air and throws them off, all save a few who have bit into flesh and hold on to her like rag dolls. One is gnawing deep into her left arm, and she hurls him off. The other is still in her side, and with both hands she grabs his giant, blocky skull and twists it. He falls limp. The wolves have stepped back. Quill stares out at them, heaving. She falls to her knees. Her breathing grows erratic, air rattles in her lungs and empties out into the air in strips. Her arm is covered in blood, and with her good arm she presses it against her side to stop the bleeding in her arm and abdomen. Her knees are failing her. The stick is still at her side, and she grabs it, hoists herself up, and leans against it with such force it risks snapping in two. She grinds her teeth against the pain, stifles a cry, and stares out at the wolves. They watch her, ponder her. They are aware of this savage woman that has come to the forest with an old friend in search of something that reminded her of God. Quill realizes her violent shaking. With every ounce of strength she can muster, she drags herself to Scout. The wolves do not move. They watch. The alpha stands at the head, ears up, and his eyes follow the broken woman as she hobbles along, sticks striking the snowy earth with almost inaudible thumps. She reaches Scout, and her throat closes up. Not here, not now, not because of her. And though her arm sears with heat and gaping tendons, she extends it and brushes back Scout's hair, Scout who is lying in the snow, cold and quiet and stone. With aching gentleness, she moves Scout's arm and sees her wide hazel eyes staring back at her. They flicker, and Quill is all of a sudden filled with something like fire, and she is warm and very awake. Her breath catches in her lungs, and as she sees Scout taking shallow, quick, painful breaths. Scout's eyes meet Quill's, both wide and full of tears, and Quill shuffles a few feet closer, kneels inward and buries her face in Scout's hair, pulls her to her chest. She sobs, and each heave racks her with agony, but she has surrendered her body, and the strength of her heaves rock them both as they lay there bleeding and shaking and praying. Scout is racked with the pain of ribs she knows are broken and limbs she knows are useless. But she wants to see Quill. She wants to remember her for how both of them used to be, even if she knows it isn't written on her face the way she wants it to be. She sees the tears on Quill's face, and she wants to wipe them away. She wants to tell her everything is all right now, that she just needs to listen. Things are quiet now, and they will stay quiet. She wants to tell her that she doesn't regret coming to the forest, that in the end we're all blind leading the blind because we carry our lanterns behind us while we walk in the dark, and we can't remember which way we're going, and nobody seems to know where we're going anyway. Quill is remembering a time when she and Scout sat on a small hill in the pit of summer, overlooking the neighborhood in which they lived. Scout had her arms resting over her knees, and Quill chewed lightly on a toothpick. Scout had said that Godspeed was a way of saying good luck to people that are going to do something wonderful, but Quill disagreed. She said it was a way of saying good luck to people that are going to die. This happened before Quill had decided that God had told her to go to the forest. This was happening when Quill and Scout spent the summer musing on the nature of endings. When the sky was down to a remote shade of lavender, and when Quill had flicked the splintered toothpick into the grass, Scout asked if when we get to the end, all of our questions will be answered. The question hung between them, visible and loud, and Quill resisted the urge to extend her hand and spin it like a wind chime. Instead, she replied that a question like that is relative to the person asking it, that she didn't know. What questions did she have that she couldn't answer? But Scout shook her head and said they would be there all night. Quill said nothing. She knew hers would keep them there for much longer. These are the things that are running through Quill's mind as she half lays and half kneels over the bleeding and broken Scout, surrounded by wolves and feeling tired. And she's remembering that they are here because she felt called here, and whether or not that was true no longer matters. Quill surrenders herself, knowing that in the end she was the type of person who dug graves and snowbanks, found herself saying Godspeed to no one but herself, and was the one living in broken glass bottles, starting fires and cutting deals with ghosts. She wants to admit that the ghosts are the ones who crucified her, but in the end she did it herself, and she is afraid to stand at the feet of Thomas, who will ask to see her hands, and she can't decide whether or not she will show him. This is that horse, the horse we never quite broke. Quill sees this in front of her and she wants to lament it, but there isn't much use hearing out in the face of a pack of wolves. Scout nods. She sees the horse too, defiant, and they are together seeing it for the first time. And both of them are quiet. Quiet because there is nothing to say, and even if there was, it wasn't worth saying. Quill remembers that it is possible to be happy despite overwhelming obstacles, to have those you love standing next to you no matter what absurd venture you find yourself on, and that it can be enough, but not always enough. Sometimes without reason or rhyme or circumstance, it fails. Sometimes you won't have the gall to face your monsters or your ghosts. Sometimes you will be alone and dying in the woods even though God told you to be there, and the snow will be quiet. Everything will fall quiet. Sometimes the quiet means nothing at all. Sometimes you lose. The wolves are pressing. They break the quiet with their yips and barks and growls, but Quill and Scout do not hear them. Their tongues hang beneath their jaws. Froth mixed with blood drips into the snow. Flares continue to fall, quiet and unmoved. The alpha flicks his ear. Quill breathes hard. Her anger flares. She feels herself growling as the pack moves in. Her hair flies across her face. She is bleary-eyed and savage and roars, slamming down her stick and blanketing Scout. But she is staring past the wolves, past the alpha and at the edge of the clearing where the horse stands and waits.